I'd like to welcome everybody to Grace Ministry Rafa. We're also known as Trinitarian Grace International. I'd like to introduce the speaker today. He is most gracious to accept the invitation to speak because I don't feel like it. and Doug always gives us a good message. I'm looking forward to hearing it today. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, thank you, Randy. All of my teachers in grade school told me I had a big mouth, so I guess being like this just kind of comes natural. There are plenty of times I wish that I would have not said anything, and this is one of those times I wish I hadn't told you that. Anyway, I want to revisit a story that is one of my favorite ones. I gave a message on Jacob, I think it was a little over 2 years ago, to this group. And like so many of the stories in the scriptures, you read them over and over again. And every time that you happen to read it again, you just see something different. You see something more. And it's no different. I learned a couple of things in putting this that I hadn't noticed before. We actually are, this is something that I was talking to my wife about. Betty came up with this really idea. She said, we're always wrestling with God. It isn't just a one-time match like what we saw with Jacob. We tend to think that was a one-time wrestling, but we're always wrestling with God. Jacob was a man with a messy life. He meets the God who keeps his promises. You know, this same God meets us in our messy lives, and he keeps his promises. Those things we can be assured of. I want to start out with a little history on it in Genesis 26 and verse 2 before I get into the life of Jacob. This promise was actually made to Jacob's grandfather. The Lord appeared to Isaac, who was Jacob's father, and he said, do not go down to Egypt, live in the land where I tell you to live. Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. There's no conditions. He says, I will give this. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the skies, and so on. So this was a promise and was made to Abraham and to his descendants. And there's a lot of people on this planet today that are descended from Abraham. In fact, through the three great monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all kind of trace ancestry, and at least some theology and ancestry, back to Abraham. Kind of interesting. So the promise is reaffirmed, and this time it's reaffirmed to Isaac. And it's interesting what he says to Isaac. I am the God of your father Abraham. He identifies himself as that. And then he tells Isaac, do not be afraid. Now, this is actually the most often repeated command that Jesus gives in the New Testament. And I think it's kind of sad in a way that God has to tell us not to be afraid of him. That would almost be like me every time I meet my daughters or my grandkids, telling them, now don't be afraid of grandpa, don't be afraid of grandpa. They shouldn't have to be. But this is the way we are with God. We are afraid of him, and he has to tell us, don't be afraid. Why? For I am with you. I'm not against you. I am with you. I will bless you and will increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. Key concepts so far are God is identifying himself. I am the God of your father. And later on, we'll see that Jacob came to understand that meant him too. I am with you. Do not be afraid, and I will bless you. Those are some of the key concepts so far to pay attention to. The next generation now was Jacob and his twin brother Esau. In Genesis 25:24, when the time came for her, their mother, to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment, so they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob, which I think means heel grabber or supplanter. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. The boys grew. Esau became a skillful hunter and a man of the open country, while Jacob was a quiet man, staying among the tents. So here you have two boys, brothers, but yet they are quite a bit different in their abilities, even though they had the same mother and father. And, you see that in families, kids are different, even though they have the same parents, they're just different. They're born with different skills, and each skill and each talent is really valuable in its own way. So trying to compare one with the other is really not a good idea. And we do that often with ourselves. We try to compare ourselves with other people. And it's just not a good idea, because none of us are the same. None of us were intended to be the same. Verse 28, Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Now, it's a little bit of a dicey thing here for parents to show favoritism, and that unfortunately happens a lot, and it almost invariably doesn't go well. Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country and he was famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew." Apparently, Jacob was a good cook, because it says he liked staying among the tents. So he might have been a master chef for all we know. "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." That's why he was also called Edom, because of red. Jacob replied, "First sell me your birthright." Now here we find Jacob being kind of a businessman, a real sharp character, where can I make a profit on this? It's just interesting how he was that way. Esau was more interested in the hunt, being out there, and of course they didn't have rifles with telescopes back then, so they had to get up close and personal to kill something with either a bow and arrow or a spear. So it was quite a lot of skill involved in what Esau did. So anyway, verse 32, we have Esau saying, "I'm about ready to die. What good's the birthright to me?" So he just dismissed it. But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and he got up and left. And so the scripture says Esau despised his birthright. To him, it didn't matter. He wasn't thinking that far ahead. That's the way we human beings are. There are some in the same family, even. You have some that think way ahead and plan out, and you think some kids in a family will only think the next 5 minutes, if that. We are just all different. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, maybe in certain circumstances, but then in other circumstances, Esau might have been better. Years later, we find Jacob cheating his brother again. Their elderly father is passing along the blessing, kind of like a will. The blessing is intended to go to the eldest son, Esau. That's where it was supposed to go in their culture. But Jacob, with the help of his mother, disguises himself and fools his father, who gives him the blessing. And it's too late. Isaac and Esau learn they have been tricked. Esau is furious, and he makes plan to kill his brother. Their mother urges Jacob to run away, and their father Isaac agrees, because he doesn't want his sons to kill each other. So Jacob runs away to his maternal grandparents to find a wife from his mother's brother's family. So I guess that would be kind of one of his cousins, wouldn't it? Kind of wanted to keep in the family. There were some problems with the locals. You can go ahead and read that account. And their mother was upset with the girls that Esau was running around with, and she didn't like that. So you can read the story. It's a fascinating one. I don't have time to go through every little detail. I have a certain thread here that I'm working on in this story, a certain part of it. Along the way to his uncle's house and his grandparents' house, he had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, "I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac." Now, he doesn't yet say that he's Jacob's God. Jacob hasn't gotten to that point where he would acknowledge that, although he is indeed Jacob's God. Jacob hasn't quite, like I said, gotten to the point where he would acknowledge that. "I will give you and your descendants the land of the earth on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and the south. All peoples on the earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you, and I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." And look at it. This is all pretty one-sided. He's not demanding anything of Jacob. He's saying, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this for you. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely, there must have been an incredibly vivid dream. Surely the Lord is in this place and I was not aware of it. He was afraid, where earlier on you see God is telling us not to be afraid, but he is afraid. That's our normal, unfortunately, our fallen reaction. When God shows up, we get scared. How awesome is this place? There is none other. This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. So he recognized there's something special going on, and it scared him. Now, Jacob winds up twisting the promise into a business deal. You just read it. God was going to do all this stuff. Now, Jacob, in his mind, he turns everything into a business deal. Then Jacob made a vow. He didn't have to do that, but he made a vow. If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I'm taking and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear so that I return safely to my father's house, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone that I've set up as a pillar will be God's house, and all that you give me, I will give you 1/10. Notice how Jacob rewrites it from a covenant to a contract with some ifs and a promise of money. It becomes, in his mind, performance-based, not grace-based. And I want to make sure we understand there is a big difference between a covenant and a contract. In the minds of a lot of folks, unfortunately, they think a covenant and a contract are the same thing. They are not. A covenant and a contract are not the same thing. Even today, I think we Christians mentally turn the new covenant into a contract. I know I did. I often would, when I would baptize people, I would present the baptism ceremony as if it were a contract that you said yes to, and then God was obligated to respond to it. That's not the way it works. We often start with grace, but then our thinking twists it into works. We all do that. So we are just like Jacob here. We all do that. Now, a troubled young Jacob builds his empire, and I'm not going to go word for word, chapter for chapter here, verse for verse. I'm just going to summarize for lack of time. As I said, I have a thread that I'm going to follow through here. Jacob meets his future father-in-law, Laban, and between the two, they make a deal for the hand of Rachel, if he works for Laban for 7 years. Now, again, a marriage really is not supposed to be a contract. It's supposed to be a covenant. It's supposed to be something out of love. But he makes it a business deal. He mixes love with business. Jacob gets tricked and he gets the other daughter, Leah, instead. So he has to work another 7 to get the girl he wanted in the first place. Well, eventually he has children from both women and from 2 of their servant girls, Bilhah and Zilpah, and winds up with 12 sons in all. Now, the shady dealings between Jacob, Laban, and Laban's sons eventually reach a crisis point. You see, Jacob's shady trickery, kind of a con man type stuff, kind of comes home to roost. And by the way, Laban and his sons were kind of dishonest themselves. So it was kind of a really difficult environment to grow up in and to be in. But anyway, Jacob has to flee with his family, with all the wealth he's managed to accumulate, back to where he came from. Anyway, the problem is he knows Esau is waiting for him, and he is afraid he's going to get killed. Because remember, Esau was the hunter, and Jacob wasn't. So he had every reason to be frightened because Esau knew that he got taken advantage of. Now, his wife Rachel, Jacob's wife Rachel, contributes to the problem by stealing some of her father's stuff when they leave. So a really dysfunctional family, to say the least. And, I'm sure we all come from dysfunctional families to one degree or another. We all do. Just none of us is perfect. I'm not a perfect father, and it just doesn't happen that way. Now, here is right before he sees Esau. He's terrified. Genesis 32 and verse 7, in great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into 2 groups, and the flocks and the herds and the camels as well. He thought, well, if Esau comes and attacks one group, the group that is left may escape. So here he was. He's kind of a military tactician almost, kind of a leader of groups of men and things. Anyway, then Jacob prayed, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac. Now, he does not acknowledge that this God is his God. He says, O Lord. He recognizes him as Lord. He says, who said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. I'm unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown to your servant. He acknowledges that you've done all this for me. And you didn't send me a bill. There was no payment involved. And you were kind and you were faithful, and and I prospered. It's just, I don't understand this, probably is what he's thinking. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I become two groups. Save me, looking now to God in desperate situation. I pray from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. So he understood kind of a little bit here. You notice in his desperation, he started to kind of think in covenant terms, not contract terms. Progress is being made, but I don't think he's quite sure God is for him yet, because he's scared. And when we're frightened, we kind of tend to wonder, is God, are you really there? Do you really care? That's pretty much universal in us. Now, here I find this interesting in this wrestling match. Let's go on into that. Genesis 32 and verse 22. So that night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his.
Did you hear it?
So he's putting some folks in a protective situation. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. Now, that man turns out to be, I believe, what is known as a pre-incarnational appearance of Jesus, the Son of God, who had not yet become Jesus, but the Son of God, wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched, and he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, let me go, for it's daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he realized that if there was going to be anything good come out of it, this person, because I think he's already knows this is a supernatural being of some kind. The man asked him, what's your name? Jacob. So he's confessing who he is. I am the supplanter. I'm the heel grabber. I'm the swindler. I'm the cheater. He acknowledges now I've lived up to my name. He answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob. You'll no longer be known as that, but Israel. And he changed his name, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome. Now you go from having a dishonorable nickname, so to speak, to an honorable name. Jacob said, please tell me your name. Well, this person doesn't. But he replied, why do you ask my name? And then he blessed him there. Didn't tell him his name. He just blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. And that would be absolutely amazing, because so many people think if you ever see God face to face, you're going to be nothing but a crispy critter. He's going to just fry you alive. And it didn't happen. He saw God face to face, and he's alive. The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. And I find it interesting, too, that God is matching him move for move. I often thought about that over the years. God could have just easily pinned him to the ground without any problem. But I think there's something important in this process of living that's in that. So it took, Jacob finally acknowledges God as his God. This is later on. It took 147 years of struggle before Jacob could acknowledge God as his God. You read that in Genesis 48, I believe. Not just the God of his fathers, but his God. By this time, he also understood it was a covenant, not a contract. So when he blessed his descendants, he used covenant language, not contract language. You can read that for yourself. Genesis 48 and verse 15. And then he blessed Joseph, who was one of his sons. He's in the process of blessing Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which he sort of adopted into the family as his own sons. So even though those two boys were his grandsons, they became heirs as if they were sons. And he said, and this is what Jacob is saying to Joseph in the presence of his sons. May the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day. You see that? He is acknowledging that this God has been his shepherd all my life to this day. He was my shepherd when I was cheating my brother. He was my shepherd when I was cheating somebody else. He was my shepherd when I was frightened to death. He saw all that. He knew all that. He was there. That's amazing. Think about that. Think about that in my life and in your life. God has been your shepherd all the days of your life, through the good times and through the bad times. The angel, verse 16, the angel who has delivered me from all harm, may he bless these boys. May they be called by my name and the names of my father, Abraham and Isaac, and may they increase greatly upon the earth. Nothing in there about performance. Nothing in there about living up to it. See, that's covenant language, not contract language. Just to be clear. I think it's a very important point for us to get. And the reason I say that is because I had this wrong for so many years. Just to be clear, and just using a couple of simple examples. Your children are always your children. They may not like you sometimes, and you may not like them sometimes, but they're always your children. That's a covenant relationship. My children did not earn the right to be my children. They are my children. I did not earn the right to be their father. I'm their father. And the same with my grandchildren. That's a covenant relationship. Employees can quit or be fired. That's a contract. God is our first and forever Father. That's a covenant relationship. God is our first. Remember, he thought of us before the foundation of the world. God is our first and forever Father. And again, that's a covenant relationship. It's not one based on performance. We are not God's employees. We are not God's employees. We are his children and always will be. We may work with God, but not for God, in the sense of, well, you're working for God and God won't like you and he'll fire you. That won't happen. You and I are always his children. I want to make sure that we understand that loud and clear. We all belong in the story of Jacob. We all make good choices and bad ones. We suffer for our bad choices as well as the bad choices of others. I think if we look at our lives, I know that I've made bad choices and have gotten hurt for it. I know other people have hurt me with their bad choices, but you know what? I've hurt other people and they've suffered because of my stupid choices. It's just, we all do that. We may hear about God, but think this God favors others and not us, like somehow other people are worse than us or better than us. No, God is for us. So we try to earn our own way as well as earn the favor of God. That's the definition, I think, of religion. And when I use the term religion here, it's a kind of a negative thing. If you think you're trying to earn something, some religions have a system that they've set up to where you can kind of work your way back into the good graces of God. Well, that's a contract. That's not a covenant. Eventually, I think we all learn that God is not a contract God, but blesses in a covenantal way. He blesses us because he is good, not because we are. And there's an old saying in the scripture that says the rain falls on the just and the unjust. And just think about it. When you have a rain go through your community, can you look at the houses and find out which people are the good ones and which are the bad ones? No, they all get the same amount of rain. He blesses in a covenantal way. Wrestling with God, not just once, but many times. We're wrestling with God all of our lives. It's a wrestling match. He could easily overwhelm us, but he doesn't. And I think this is a critical statement we must understand. He values our freedom of choice even more than we do. We are supposed to be free. We're not to be slaves of anyone, and God does not want slaves. He wants children, sons and daughters. He doesn't want slaves. And it's that freedom thing that can causes so much grief and pain because we don't know how to handle it and others don't know how to handle it. And so we really hurt each other. But anyway, he matches our moves with a counter move until we learn and stop trying to earn our salvation and instead ask for the undeserved blessing, which is what, Jacob finally did. I find it interesting as well that God chose one of the most intimate contact sport there is to deal with Jacob. Can you imagine? Here's God thoroughly entangled in a struggle with a man. He's definitely not separated and off in the distance. It's rough, sweat and flesh on flesh, and it's very, very intimate struggle, wrestling. As it was with Jacob, so it shall be with you. Matthew 28 and verse 18. This Jesus, who is the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, so on and so on. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. And I think this means more than just those disciples at that time. It's talking about you. It's talking about me. It's talking about all of us. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Baptism is not part of a contract. It's a sign. It's a sign. Anyway, verse 20. And teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am, it's one of the names of God, I am with you. Take that personally. I am with you always, just like he was with Jacob, in the middle of our horribleness, in the middle of our cheating, in the middle of our happy times. He's always with us to the very end of the age. That, my friends, is covenant language, and you are included. Amen.